You're gonna give us another countdown? Welcome into Press Box Live. I'm Stan the Fan Charles. I'm the one that Luke Jackson is pointing at. Stan the Fan Charles of Press Box and PressBoxOnline.com. Luke Jackson is with us, of course, and Luke, you and I have a new nickname for Ross Grimsley. He's for years has been the old left-hander, and now would you like to introduce him?
The 0.02 percenter? Is that
That's
what we're
right.
going with?
Yep.
All right.
How's that feel? Is that an honor to be a 0.2%?
I don't know. You tell me.
Well, it means that you're not as well known as, say, a Brooks Robinson, a Frank Robinson, Ted Williams, but you kind of knew that already, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, pretty much.
All right, Luke and I are talking, of course, about we both used Ross last week. In the Immaculate Grid, there was an intersection of a Washington National, which also counts as a Montreal Expo, and a Cincinnati Red. And if it had been somebody like really obvious, like let's say it was Rusty Staub had been the Expo and he had played for the Reds, he would have been like 30 or 40%. Ross was 0.2%. So we're proud. We're still proud to know you.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey, if you show up on the Immaculate Grid, you had a successful career.
That's exactly
I'll take
right.
that. That sounds good.
Ross, you know who I used today? I've been waiting to pull him out of my hat. Do you ever remember the name? This was a St. Louis Cardinal Dodger. Ever remember the name Rip Rapolsky?
Yep. My dad played with him.
He was a 0.1%er. All right. Anyway.
I know exactly who he is.
All right. He was a hell of a ball player, too.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Briefly.
Where actually he got about 8 years in the big leagues, I think. Played for a whole host of teams. And that was pretty good usage of him. Hey, we're brought to you today, in addition from the Costa Sin, we're brought to you by the expert and award-winning AJ Michaels Heating, AC Plumbing, and Home Performance. They'll improve your home's energy efficiency and comfort levels. AC season is coming up fast. New rebates and discounts are available. More at ajmichaels.com. And a brief word about the Costa Sin. My wife follows. She's a real foodie. They have these things. I got to read more and find out the price point. If you go, let's say, a table of 12, you can order, Ross. It would be something you would see at a wedding or a bar mitzvah or a graduation where there's 100 people. They've got these layered, like almost fountains of seafood, including crab, shrimp, you name it. It's on there. Lobster. I forget what exactly they're called, but I'm going to start plugging that. It's a great thing to do if you're a party of 8, 10, or 12. It's a great way to get your seafood on there. All right. Ross, the Orioles come back from the West Coast. And by the way, we're not going to ignore the John Angelo's interview with the New York Times, but I just didn't want to lead with that today because they came back. They had a real successful series in Seattle, winning 2 or 3 from one of the hottest teams in baseball. They then went to San Diego and lost 2 or 3. And of course, then they had the benefit of having Oakland on the schedule, and we kind of clobbered them. We gobsmacked them.
Yeah.
What did we do? We keel, what's it called when that word you used? What's that? We tallywagged them. The Oakland A's. We tallywagged them all 3 games, including that blowout victory yesterday. 6-3 on the West Coast, guys. Pretty good, Ross.
You can't beat that. I mean, you go on the West Coast trip, you're hoping to be 500 at best, and coming back, 6-3. I think they were 6-3.
Yep.
And, yeah, that's a bonus. But you know what? They are a really good team. They busted Seattle, who had won 9 in a row.
Right.
And then they go to San Diego, and you just can't tell about San Diego. I think they won the first game there, and then they lost 2, the last 2.
Yep.
But going to and playing some of those teams, obviously Oakland is the doormat of the league. But and you never can tell. They got they're a major league team. They can win. But
My uncle Herb used to say about an opponent, they all have 2 arms and 2 legs.
well, it's, when I was with the Reds, Big Red Machine had trouble beating San Diego.
Mhm.
They had so much trouble with Clay Kirby, they traded for him. Then like in 74 or something like that, 74 or 5. But yeah, a great road trip. Going to the West Coast, you can't beat that. And coming back, and I think they take on Toronto tonight. If I'm not
Tomorrow night.
mistaken.
Tomorrow
night. And that's that should be a good series.
Luke, just a quick question about the fact that the schedule seems to give them a somewhat soft 9-game homestand, and I want to ask Ross this too, but then they go right back on the road and back out to the West Coast again. That's a little bit of a tough schedule. They got Arizona and the Angels, competition not as good, but not easy to go back out there again.
No, probably not. And Ross could probably speak to that a lot better than me. But I think that's one of the things with the new schedule facing every team, that you're probably going to have 1 or 2 more West Coast trips than you would have had in previous years. So I think that's just part of it at this point with the schedule. And to your point, I think with this homestand, they do have an opportunity to continue to build their American League East lead. I will say, though, that Toronto, they're going to give them the best they have, because they're getting Kikuchi, Gosman, and Barrios, who have been their 3 best pitchers so far this year. Toronto got Jordan Romano back in the back end of their bullpen, so they've got Romano and Hicks back there. You're going to get everything Toronto has in this 3-game series. As Toronto, really, if the Blue Jays want to make a run at the division, they've got to make some noise in Baltimore this week.
I think more importantly to that point, Luke, the way Seattle's playing now, if Toronto wants to make a real bid for a wild card and be on the inside, they've got to get hot. I used in the power rankings, I said they need a Mariners moment right now. They need to win like 9 of 12 or 12 of 14, something like that.
And Vlad left yesterday's game with like some sort of finger issue, but they have their best player back in Bo Bichette. He's really the engine. He's the guy that makes them go. And so they'll have Bichette back for the Baltimore series, and I'm sure Bo had this Orioles series circle on his calendar of wanting to be back by now. So it should be a really good series in Baltimore. And both teams will need it. Both teams are coming off of an off day today, so both bullpens will be rested, so it should be good.
I apologize if that was on folks viewing me, that my screen, I accidentally hit something. Ross, before we talk more about the homestand, how difficult, do you ever remember that quick a turnaround where you came back from a 3-city 9-game road trip, and 9 days later you got to get on the road again? And it's a weird trip because it's Arizona, the Angels, back to Boston for 3.
Crazy schedule. I mean, that's, usually it was split up first half, second half. It affects people different. Going out sometimes is tougher on some guys. Coming back, is tougher to adjust to the East Coast time. But, regardless, going out that soon after a trip out there can be pretty tough. And like I said, it affects pitchers different, hitters different. It's just but it affects you. It affects you. But once you get used to it, now you got to go back the other side, and that's sometimes tougher for a lot of people. But yeah, it's something you don't see. But with the new schedule, the way they got it, thank God they got a day off here, and hopefully they'll have some day offs. On the next trip out that way.
Do you guys, I've been getting a lot of people questioning whether or not there really is a chance that we could see Jackson Holiday come up. I mean, these are smart baseball people. To me, it's not going to happen, but I've been asked a couple times, do you think he could make a cameo appearance in September? Luke, I'll start with you.
I mean, could he? Sure. Would he be able to handle himself okay in the major leagues right now? I wouldn't put it past him. So, but I mean, they have infield depth at AAA right now that's been ready for a minute now. Like Joey Ortiz has been major league ready for like a solid year at this point,
Yeah.
and he can't get an extended opportunity. I don't see like the pressing infield need on the major league roster the same way there was a pressing third base need a decade ago when Manny was brought up.
Yeah.
When they desperately needed just somebody who could defend the position and field the position at third base.
God,
So
I can't remember who was at third before
Wilson
him.
Benjamin.
Oh
was
my
at third.
God, that's right. That's right.
And
Nickname Meat.
I remember prior to Manny getting called up, there was one writer who said it was Benjamin at third and Mark Reynolds at first. And he said, someone in the first row is going to get killed with these guys at the corners. Anyway, so there's not that sort of pressing need. I don't see it happening, but could Jackson handle himself at the major league level right now? I wouldn't be shocked if he could, which is amazing at 19 years old. But I think you also have to be fair to the kid. You really want any player to get at least 500 to 600 at bats at the upper levels of the minor leagues before you send them to the major leagues, because you want to give them a solid foundation of performance before at that level, before you send them up to the major leagues to give them a shot at success. And really, you want a player to struggle, and Ross can speak to this a lot better than I can. You want a player to struggle in the minor leagues before he gets to the major leagues, if at all possible, because it's tough on a player. And again, Ross can speak to this. It's tough on a player when the first time he really struggles is in front of everybody in the major leagues.
Ross, I'll throw that to you.
I've seen it before. I can name David Clyde, Rocky Coppinger, who had never lost. And I was there with him in AAA when in spring training when he struggled, and he never regained. He got up to the big leagues. He started hanging out with some guys that he shouldn't be hanging out with, and try to do the same thing.
I wonder who those guys were.
Trying to do the same thing, and no knock on those guys.
Yeah,
he was just trying to do what they were doing, and he wasn't.
But they had the pedigree. They had.
Well, he didn't know, but
one of them named Scott. One of them named Scott Erickson had the pedigree. The other one, Sidney Ponson, fell by the wayside pretty quickly too.
Yeah, no, I think David Wells was in there if I'm not mistaken. But I mean, he just couldn't hang with those guys, and he tried to do that, and it was a mistake. And you just don't know. You know, you get the big, like you say, you get up there. You've never struggled. You struggle, and it's really tough to bounce back when you're on the big stage. And I mean, he's got a bloodline. He's been around the game, with his dad. He knows it, and he knows probably how to handle himself. But I mean, there's no major need for him to come up here and do it and take that opportunity. And like I said, it used to be 1,000, 1,200 at bats before they wanted to make sure that you were ready and just to learn as much as you could in that amount of time. And I think that's really important. And you're seeing a lot of guys come into the big leagues with a lot of other organizations that hadn't had a lot of time in the minor league. And hopefully, they don't have to go through tough times. And you want guys to struggle. And the best time to struggle is in the minor league, because you learn how to make adjustments. It's really tough. You're gonna have to make adjustments in the big league whether you struggled in the minors or not, because they're gonna figure out how to pitch you and how to do different things like that. So it's something I don't think is needed. If he does, he could probably handle it, but it's kind of a chance you're taking if you do that.
Flip side of the coin, Luke and Ross, Jorge Mateo had been given a real opportunity in Baltimore, got a lot of playing time, put a good reel together, so to speak. He was pretty darn terrific for a good chunk of last year, and early this year he was good. It's clear he's not a major league regular, but he's been pretty nice to have on the squad, hasn't he, Luke?
Yeah, I mean, he carried him in April, but I mean, the bat, it's been a struggle the past 4 months for him with the bat. There's no question about it. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if he's a little banged up, just because he hasn't been quite as good defensively as he was last year when he was such a difference maker with his range. I haven't quite seen that this year, but recently, particularly in that Oakland series, I thought he was pretty damn good defensively. He started to look like the Jorge Mateo defensively of last year. during the Oakland series. And of course, he hits the inside the park home run. And once the Oakland outfielders bungled that ball, you knew that there was a chance that he was going to be able to make it all the way around. And then in the Seattle series, he scores from third on a contact play that no one else scores on. The way the slide was terrific too. So I think he definitely adds value to the club. Brandon is still playing him against left-handed starters. That's how he's keeping him in the mix. Kikuchi goes tomorrow for the Jays, so I figure he'll be in there at shortstop. So
good chance.
Hopefully he can pick up where he left off in Oakland.
All right. Luke, Ross, I got to ask you about one player, and our Glenn Clark jumped me in terms of how quickly he got out a piece about owing Mountcastle an apology about how we had been characterizing him. I have not been a Ryan Mountcastle disciple at all at any time. I like him as a kid. I never got a bad vibe. Doesn't seem like a jackass or swelled head, but the plate discipline for me has never been there. Now you hear about 6 weeks ago that after about a month of terrible struggles where he was like striking out 7 out of 10 times or something like that. But you hear that he's got vertigo. He goes down to the minors and starts on a rehab after being out 3 or 4 days only. And he wasn't particularly great at AAA. And then they bring him back when his AAA assignment time was up. I think it was Luke, 10 days. I think they had to bring him back up.
It might have been a little bit more.
Might have been 15
like that.
days.
Yeah, it might have been something like that. Yeah.
So anyway, he comes up and he's been one of not the best hitters on the team. He's been one of the best hitters in all of baseball. And all of a sudden he's taking walks. I think he's walked more since he came up 2.5 weeks ago than he had the first 3 months of the season. What do you make of that?
His last 30 games, he's hitting almost 400.
I know.
I think 282, 6 homers, 20 RBIs, and he's been on fire. But making adjustments and maybe that vertigo had something to do, obviously, that kept him. But he always was a guy.
Ross, could he have conceivably had the vertigo for 10 days prior to when they said he had it?
Possible, but I'm not, had to ask somebody that has vertigo. I don't know, but very, very possible. I mean, the way he was swinging the bat, you knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
And how he chased pitches. And I mean, you're chasing, pitches off the plate by several inches, or half a foot. You're not picking the ball up. You're not seeing it. Something's wrong here. And obviously that was it. But he'd been a guy that didn't take a lot of pitches. He swung at some balls out of the zone, a little more, obviously, before he came up last month. But he's a guy that he's got some power. He hits some home runs. And when he's patient, he swings at good pitches, and he does what he's doing. So hopefully, he might have picked something up and made some adjustments. And, we'll see what pitchers do now with him, but how they make adjustments with him. But he's not chasing those terrible pitches like he once was, and that should be something that really helps him.
Hey, we'll have more questions for Luke Jackson and Ross Grimsley in just a moment. Now, I want to tell you about one of our new sponsors, and I'm proud to be associated with them, and that is Superbook Sports. Now is the time to place your baseball bets and your preseason football bets with Superbook Sports. Superbook is the most trusted name in Vegas. And now you can use promo code StanCharles23 to score up to $250 with their first bet bonus. Win or lose, they will match your first bet up to $250 with promo code StanCharles23. All one word with no spaces. Don't miss out this season. Win some money with Superbook Sports and promo code StanCharles23. If you like Glenn Clark more than me, use Glenn Clark 23, which I know Ross and Luke probably have. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. And guys, Ravens are playing tonight. They're 1.5 point favorite. The Ravens are playing the Commanders down at what do they call that place?
I think it's still FedEx Field. I think.
FedEx Field, still FedEx Field.
Commander Stadium.
Commander Stadium, Command Center. That's what they should call it, Command Central.
Command Central. Yeah.
Glenn pointed out last week, that streak the Ravens have of
Right.
just winning games. Don't even bet the point spread, just bet the Ravens to win the game. What do
Right.
you think?
We can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you bet on you bet on preseason games, can you?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
You
kind of
definitely
crazy.
can.
I wouldn't know. That's kind of crazy to do it, but
Yep.
You're
But
not
you know,
wrong, Ross.
but
You are
it's-
not wrong.
But as
yeah,
an-
I don't. What are you betting on? You're betting on a bunch of guys you'll probably never see.
That's right.
But people
Well-
like to gamble, don't they? People love to gamble.
Well, how about cockfighting? What are you betting on there? Two
Well,
ferocious
I
bird
don't want to get
roosters
into that.
or whatever they are. Hey, Ravens though played tonight at 8:00. And Luke, I think that's on in addition to WBAL. I think it's on
ESPN game.
ESPN game.
Yeah.
Okay. But it'll be on both stations, right?
Yeah.
ESPN and WBAL.
Is Lamar going to play?
No.
No.
Probably won't.
No.
I mean,
I
they
hope
got one more preseason game, right?
After
Right.
this, yeah.
Right.
I hope
After
Josh.
like
I hope Josh
They play
Johnson
four?
doesn't play either. No, they've got 3 now.
3. Okay.
They played the Eagles. They play Washington, and what's their last one? Titans.
Tampa Bay, maybe.
Okay.
That
Yeah,
sounds right.
Tampa.
All right.
I think it is.
Okay.
Nice to go down and say hello to Baker Mayfield.
And Ross Grimsley, he's down there.
Oh yeah,
That's right. I forgot. That's what I forgot. Baker Mayfield, by the way, amidst these allegations that they want to do a whole study of his business and find out he's missing $12 million. And who owned all of his other businesses? His dad. That's a great story. Okay.
Uh-oh.
Anyway, getting back to Oriole talk, we've gone about 22 minutes and we haven't talked about the 6,000-pound elephant in the room. Ross, I know you haven't had time to read the whole article.
Right.
John Angelo sat down with somebody at the New York Times and they interviewed him, but it's more a story than a Q&A. Luke, I know you've read it and you were nice enough to figure out the paywall and send it to me so I could read it. I'm scratching my head. I don't think there's anything horrible that he said, but I wonder what sense it made to bring up the notion that this core group of players might not be here as long as Brooks and Palmer and other old-time Orioles were.
I don't know what the motivation behind sitting down with the Times was. I can't figure it out.
Luke, can you move
you know,
your hands?
I'm
so I
sorry.
can see you?
I
There we go.
can't figure it out. Stan, you would probably have a much better feel for, you've been around the business a lot longer than I have about why an owner would sit down for this type of story. I don't know. I can't wrap my arms around it. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, there's a certain prestige talking to the New York Times. And I'm sure John likes that. But I don't know what the purpose. I mean, I know he wanted to talk. Obviously, they wanted to get into the Kevin Brown situation a little bit, which he said that the club is now looking into how it occurred. I don't quite understand that. But the notion that some of these core players won't be here, I don't understand. It seems like he's making an equivalency that unless I get this deal
Right.
with the state and some added revenue streams, I might not be able to afford the players you love. But he's not telling that to a Baltimore audience. He's telling it to
A
a
national
worldwide
audience.
audience.
Yeah.
I don't get that,
Yeah, and as of right now, it's to bring it up now, it's a non-issue right now because all these guys that we're talking about are already under club control for several more years.
Right.
So I just feel you brought this up to me, Stan. You hope that it doesn't become a distraction where something that like Brandon Hyde has to address.
Well, I'm sure he's going to be asked that tomorrow.
And that's totally unfair of him to have to address that.
Yeah.
Completely unfair. It's not, it's not under his purview, and and I'm sure the players will be asked about it as well. And it's a distraction that didn't just completely self-inflicted, right?
Yep.
Another distraction.
Right.
Do you think, Ross, if the players and Brandon Hyde are asked that tomorrow, and Mike Elias for for that fact. Do you think it can be a distraction?
With these guys now, no. They're playing baseball and having a great time.
Yeah.
I don't think some of them realize
Gunner's not worried about what's going to happen in
I
2027.
don't see that. I don't see them doing that. But
Okay.
well, why it was mentioned, I have no idea. But I can go. I mean, it's obvious that they can't keep everybody. I mean, everybody knows that.
Yeah, I've known that.
Why even
I
bring
didn't
it up?
right, exactly.
And, and I'll use, the Giants, since I was there for a long time. The Giants were, when they won the World Series 3 out of 5 years, they kept the core guys that they needed and filled in with other guys. And they did that and without saying a word about it. This is what they had to do, and that probably is what the Orioles or Angels should have done. It's just, we realize that, everybody knows that in the game or should know it. But we'll have to do, we'll have to make changes, and you may have to lose a year, obviously not trying to, but lose and then fill in something for the next year. The Giants did that. They were great.
Masterful. Yeah, they were great.
They had great baseball people. They had great baseball people that were running this thing, that everybody worked together, and that's what you got to do. And that's what it looks like the O's have that.
Yeah.
But you got to have your ownership on your side too, and kind of step back and understand what the deal is.
Yeah.
And let the people know the game take care of that.
Yeah. And I got to give the Orioles credit. Look, when John Angelo sat down, and it's the most important hire he's ever made, was hiring Mike Elias. I'm sure that was discussed, was John being explained to how you got to have, and this is exactly what happened to the Orioles when they couldn't afford Machado and who else did Markakis and all those guys together. They couldn't afford all of them. They were all going to go, and there was nothing left in the pipeline. That's the whole point of establishing a pipeline that is very fertile with new players coming up. So they had some Machado. They had some outstanding players. No question about it.
And they could have, if they had been winning and going to the playoffs and maybe going to a World Series, they could have found a way to keep some of those guys and add bits and pieces here and maybe get a free agent here or there and move on. But they couldn't do that, or they didn't do that, and they weren't winning.
Yeah. The guys that they lost that 1 year. I think it was after the 17 season or after 16 when they lost Markakis, Andrew Miller, and somebody else.
That was after 14, and it was
14.
It was Nelson Cruz as well, and
Nelson Cruz,
and they decided to keep JJ Hardy.
Yeah,
and that was, of those four, that turned out to be the wrong choice. Yeah. Any of the other three would have been a better choice. However, I think losing all three of those guys sort of put the motions in, the irons in the fire to overpay Chris Davis. Because they didn't want to do that
with Davis. When did they do that with Davis?
After the 15 season.
After the 15 season.
Several people went in and said, "Don't do that."
Right.
Don't.
But I can tell you, Ross, several people went in and told him, "You got to sign this guy."
I know some of them that I would have went, "Wait a minute, I'm gonna
raise my hand. I wanted them to sign Chris Davis. I didn't want 7 at 160. I was in the 5 at 110.
Yeah,
right.
And that's
which at the time was what he was worth. That was the contract he was worth at the time, and nobody foresaw him collapsing the way he did so quickly. But at the time, he was worth exactly what you said, Stan, about 5 and 110. That's what he was worth at that time.
Yeah. And I'll always think that historically what happened to Chris Davis was that the shifts totally played with his head, and he became a very damaged psychological player. And that's what we saw. Ross, this starting pitching, Bradish pitched a brilliant game yesterday. Grayson has really been on the top of his game. Kramer's been pretty good. The two Sage veterans have met a little bit of problem lately. I mean, that Flaherty performance in San Diego was just abysmal.
Yeah, I think you're gonna see that occasionally out of him.
Yeah.
Hopefully, he can get it together for this run, to the end of the season, or end of their season, be it the playoffs, World Series, or whatever. But it's gonna, 6-man rotation. I guess they got. They're gonna need the bullpen to really step up. Wells comes back, hopefully. He's going to be a major part of that. Means I don't know what he can do.
He threw 4 innings at Bowie the other day,
Yeah.
and I'm sure he's still building up. He's probably around 60 pitches right now in an outing. And do you bring him back in a relief role, or in 2 weeks do you need a starter? I don't know.
Right.
But I think he's certainly still in spring training mode. And you would know this a lot better than me, Ross. A guy who hasn't pitched in a major league game since April of 2022, like, what does that look like coming back in September of 23?
Yeah. I mean, he's going to be in some games. I mean, this thing is still 3 games separating the O's and Tampa Bay. And who knows what Toronto sweeps.
Then they're right back in the division.
But they're right back in it, and that's what they're going to have to do. That, like I said, they're throwing their horses and they got their guys coming. So if they get on a streak, much like Seattle, who knows what could happen. But I think Means is big, but I don't think you can put that pressure on him to go out, especially coming back from Tommy John. That's a lot on a guy, and so they might take their time with him, hopefully, and not try to overdo it with him, because he's going to get in the game and he's going to want to do well, and he's going to give a little bit extra. And maybe it's not there. Maybe you take a chance on doing that and hurting yourself. And
imagine that, whenever he pitches again in the major leagues, I assume it'll happen this year. That'll be the first time he'll ever pitch in a pennant race.
Right.
And it's coming off of Tommy John. Like you said, that might be a little bit of a challenge. I'll also add DL Hall as a bullpen option in September.
Well, they're going to need some.
He's finished his reloading,
reinforcement.
Oh yeah, he's deloaded. Now. He's reloaded, and now his velocity's back, and he's striking everyone out at Norfolk, and the whole thing. Yeah.
Hey, the one guy we haven't mentioned a word about, and the old 2%er, 0.2%er should know about this. What has Cole Irvin been doing that's right? Because I want to give him kudos. I pat myself a little on the back. I'm wrong about a bunch of things, but I believed in this guy. What's he doing that's turned his season around, Ross? Because he's been pretty darn good.
Yeah, like we talked about earlier, when he was struggling, he was behind in the count. Pitches where he gets behind, now you got to throw the ball over.
Right.
He's not an overpowering guy, and he changes speeds. He throws strikes. He gets ahead in the count. He doesn't walk a lot of guys. That's a lot of Orioles starters, pitchers. They don't walk a lot of guys, and that's a big thing. And you know what? The defense has been superb. I mean, they are fielding percentage. I think they're tied for first in the American League. Errors, I think they're tied for second fewest. And you get some defense, then as a pitcher, you're not afraid to throw the ball over the plate then. And I know the best defense in baseball now is the swing and miss. But if you're a guy that don't throw, in the 95s and on up, you gotta make them hit the ball. You gotta make pitches, and that's more or less what he's done. He's pitching. I think last year, guys, he averaged over 6 innings a start.
Yeah.
And he
has about 177 or 180 innings.
He has that ability to do that. He throws, he throws strikes, he changes speeds, and he mixes it up. That's his success. And when he does that, obviously he wasn't doing that before for whatever reason, but now he seems to be doing it more consistently, and you're getting what you saw last year.
So
Ross, you worked with a lot of kids down in the minor leagues, some in that situation who thought they were major league caliber pitchers. I give him a lot of credit for not pouting, not letting the whole situation overwhelm him. He's been a great teammate, roots for everybody on his side, and doesn't pop off about what they did to me, how they treated me. He just went about his business.
Yeah, I think when obviously the Orioles got something pitching wise, a program that they have or something they believe, and I think one of the biggest things is throwing the ball over the plate. That's something that they started doing, or one of the main things I think. And you saw it first pitch strikes. I mean, it's basic stuff. It's really basic. Being able to throw an off-speed pitch over the plate when you're behind in the count. Knowing the hitters, and that is something that the Oriole pitchers have done. And I've heard only good things in the minor leagues about the whole program.
Yeah.
Pitching, hitting, base running, defense. That's something that you don't see with a lot of teams. And there was an article, I told you to read.
Yeah.
A lot of the base running is awful overall. and you know who Dusty Baker even said that. Major league managers are saying it. You saw the triple play Tampa Bay had.
Right.
No outs, ground ball to third base or shortstop, and he looked at the runner at third, then he gets the double play, then the runner goes. You go right off the bat. I mean, come on. But that's something, you see it. If you watch a game, you'll see something that, they're not supposed to do that. And you just shake your head going, wait a minute. But it's more prevalent now in the game than ever before. For whatever reason, that's another show, but
all right.
Luke,
I interrupted you before. You were about to say something when I.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask Ross. So Cole Irvin in Seattle, he threw 5 very good innings. They're still building him back up as a starter. But one of the things in Seattle is that he threw a lot of cutters up and in to right-handed hitters, and that was like the most cutters he has thrown in a while. So, and I'm sure that's something that they have been harping on for a while with him. So is that when you make that sort of adjustment, especially as a left-handed pitcher, is that something that has to be more gradual where they're talking to him about that through the season? Or is that something that could be just like a specific game plan for that particular lineup?
Well, it could be, but I mean, pitching up in the zone, out of the zone, get the hitters to chase is a big thing now. And throwing cutters, the big thing with cutters, you can't throw it over the plate. It has to be either inside or away, and if that happens, you got something. So obviously he's an older veteran type guy. He can make changes. It shouldn't be, he's not overpowering. It's not going to tax his arm to do that. So making subtle changes and showing him, hey, look, you do this. You have a lot of success doing this. Mm-hmm. Or you have in the past, whatever. And so, you might want to try that. And if you try it and it works, then you do it again. Then you do it again. And you become confident in it. So obviously they may have seen something and he tried it, it works. So you might see more of it.
And I also read a story, Ross, that this Jacob Webb character who they claimed off of waivers from the Angels, apparently the Angels had de-emphasized his changeup and the Orioles re-emphasized that changeup, and that he threw that changeup like 8 straight times to get himself out of jail against the A's in the bottom of the 10th inning. When an organization claims another pitcher, how quickly can they make changes to that pitcher's arsenal, and gain the trust of that pitcher that what you're telling them is going to help them?
Yeah, obviously, he had a decent changeup, or they're not going to just, hey, you got to throw a changeup. I mean, it depends on what kind of changeup you got. If you got good arm speed,
right?
You can locate it, you can keep it down for the most part. That's what you want to do,
right?
And if he has it and it's a good one, then hey, let's try it. You may have had success with it, but for some reason they didn't call it, or they didn't want you to use it wherever you just came from.
Sorry, go ahead, Ross.
No, go ahead.
A little bit quickly because we're running over, but seriously, when they acquire a guy like that, does he sit down with Holt and Brandon and they sort of kind of have an entry Q&A of what was going on? We saw that we liked your change up, and is there a little give and take where they get where his head is at about what was happening prior to coming here?
Oh yeah, everybody, the manager and the pitching coach will sit down, obviously with you. The pitching coach usually will get with you before, but you go in and see the manager, and then obviously they'll take all the information that they've gathered before they got them.
Yeah.
And going over that, and yeah, they get an idea of what he's done, of what he was doing. They obviously were interested in him because they had seen him before, and they have the numbers and all the stuff he does. So they just took some of the things that they obviously knew, and and you talk about it, and I'm sure they see him throw, in the pen on the side, what have you, and in the games, and then they move forward from that. So they're taking all this information and obviously talking to him about it, what he's done in the past, what kind of success, what kind of confidence he has in certain pitches. How do you grade your pitches? Whatever they are, 1, 2, 3, 4, your fastball, slider, changeup, split, whatever. How do you grade that? This is what we think, and the success you've had. So, you sit down and discuss and look at all the information.
All right, guys, I appreciate it. Luke, when you sign off, don't bump me off because I got to do one more commercial. All right.
All
I
right.
want to thank the folks at Superbook Sports. Remember, when you sign up with them, use the promo code StanCharles23. And also want to thank our friends at AJ Michaels. But right now, I got to tell you about the Costas Inn. You guys can stay or go, and we'll see you guys next Monday. But appreciate you being on with us. Also, reminder, Thursday night, I'll be on by myself with Bo Smolka talking Orioles. But the Costas Inn, located 4100 North Point Boulevard. I know Ross, his mouth he's foaming at the mouth, waiting to eat crabs. Maybe that's a terrible way to describe it, but we're going to eat some.
It's about right.
We're gonna eat some crabs out at the Costas Inn when Ross gets to town. But it's that time of year to eat some Maryland crabs, and they got a lot of them, Texas and Louisiana, but they're all steamed Maryland style, and nobody does it better than the Costas Inn, located 4100 North Point Boulevard. Call ahead to reserve your crabs, find out the price point, size, and all that good stuff, and you'll have a great time at the Costas Inn. For Luke Jackson, Ross Grimsley, I'm Stan the Fan, and I'll see you again Thursday night. Don't forget, O's off tonight. 3-game series against Toronto starts tomorrow night. Ravens play tonight at 8 o'clock at Washington. Bye, guys. Bye, Luke. Bye, Ross.